So good evening, everyone. Welcome to this first session of the new edition of the Seminar on Space Technologies and the interconnection of high strategic capabilities. As a quick reminder, the seminar is part of the research project of our institute, that is the interconnection of high strategic capabilities, and aims to analyze the cross tissues of space capabilities, with other strategic capabilities such as nuclear, air power, cyber, and land battle. And this seminar is aimed at doctoral students, young researchers, and master students. We have a few here around the table with us this evening, and to highlight their research work. And today we are going to be talking about an ongoing revolution that is of the artificial intelligence and its interconnection with operation and the space environment. And to do so, we are delighted to have with us Giovanni Tricco, PhD candidate on AI and space governance at the University of Bologne and the Vrije Universiteit at Brussel, co-lead of the Space Law and Policy Research Group at the Space Generation Advisory Council, and from this month, seconded in the legal and institutional team of ICO, the European leader in the development of AI for space activities. Welcome, Giovanni.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation, for the organization.
And to begin with a little introduction phase, firstly, could you explain to our listeners exactly what artificial intelligence is? Because it's often the basis of a lot of extrapolations without anyone really knowing, what is it or for how it works.
Yeah, so as I said, thank you really a lot for the invitation, for the organization, and I will say that this is a great starting point, this question. And as you noted, there is often a debate and confusion around what is an artificial intelligence. And indeed, there is not like a single universally agreed upon definition for such systems. But for the sake of our discussions, and also given that we are based in Europe, I will start with we can say a widely accepted definition that was provided first by the IESD, and which has also been then adopted, like a roughly similar one, in the European AI Act, that maybe you're aware is the first comprehensive legislative framework for artificial intelligence adopted by the EU. And it's important to say that this definition, through the IESD, was endorsed by also other major powers such as the US or Japan. Indeed, here we find in the AI Act that an AI system is a machine-based system that, given some explicit or implicit objective, infers from the input that received and generates some output that can be in the form of prediction, recommendations, such as an LLM, such as ChatGPT, that can influence physical or virtual environments. And different AI systems, obviously, they vary in the level of autonomy and adaptiveness after deployment. And I would put an emphasis in this last sentence because it's especially relevant to space operation. And indeed, it highlights a key shift in the capabilities of AI systems, namely their degrees of autonomy and adaptability post-deployment. Because, why I'm saying this? Because AI in space operation is not entirely new. Historical or a simple form of AI were used also in space operations, such as more basic logical AI system that were a more predictable system that were following a strict if-then logic. So if a condition A is met, then response B is executed. Instead, today we are seeing a shift towards more sophisticated AI technologies in the matter of particularly, as you probably know, like machine learning or deep learning systems that can independently learn and adapt to take specific action. And here, as one of my professors, Professor Pagallo, always says, autonomy in AI means that systems may modify their internal states without external stimuli, controlling their actions without direct human intervention, so the famous human in the loop. And this is particularly valuable in space because communication, especially in space exploration, may delay, meaning that systems probably will need to take some decisions on their own. And I would say that here is like where the increasing interest lies in the industry. So the role of AI in space operations to give more autonomy and to opening up new opportunities in space operation. But obviously with these opportunities, there are coming also new challenges. So we say that this is, I would say, a good starting point on what is AI and its interaction with space.
Okay, and so if I understand correctly, it's some kind, maybe so sometimes we have difficulty, you know, to make the difference between artificial intelligence and a very advanced form of automation. And you speak about a degree of autonomy. So is this the main difference with an automatic, with a great automation level and the AI? So to remake my question, what is the main difference between artificial intelligence and a very advanced form of automation?
Yes, so this is indeed a good point. I would say that the main difference that are sophisticated systems such as machine learning and deep learning systems is able to learn itself and to modify their internal status, and so therefore having different outputs. So it's like we can say this unpredictability that is the difference between really advanced form of automation or like really specific sophisticated systems such as machine learning and deep learning systems. And also obviously this is what the industry is really interested at the moment, because it can really like open up different opportunities, as I will explain. But I would say that the unpredictability of the system is probably like the characterizing factor.
Okay, it's very clear. And on this basis, could you explain to our audience what your thesis is, just in a few words, you know?
Yes, absolutely. So indeed, my research goes through this evolving role that AI is having in the space sector, especially relating to ensuring long-term sustainability of safety of space operation. And obviously, to allow this integration, I also addressed the new like policy or legal challenges that come within integration of AI. And I will say that for what I can say for the moment, giving you like a brief overview, I'm tracking like on one side the evolution of AI technologies in space, looking at like at the limitation and the capabilities tailored for space operation. And in particular, here I focus on edge computing, that essentially is the capability for a satellite to process data directly on board in space activities. And obviously this technology, as we can understand, has been always like a strategic goal in the space sector, because it reduces the need to constantly send back to Earth data, and therefore you can really speed up decision-making process in real time. And obviously coming within all these, as I said before, unpredictability or like these new features, a second area of like research is like navigating the legal and policy landscape and challenges given by AI integration in space, because indeed these issues span different domains connected to space systems, such as also because obviously with integration of AI you will also have, as typical of like more tech law related field, problems regarding cybersecurity, data privacy, or dual use technology or intellectual property. And here I will close like with two questions that perhaps can start the discussion, like if a satellites become more autonomous, how do we ensure that they remain secure from cyber threats, or like how we protect sensitive data that the AI might generate or process. So finding answer to this question is really important. And then I would say that this is like my area of research. So yeah.
Okay, it's making the perfect transition, because as we all know, internet by satellite is benefiting of an unprecedented boom. And even if there are still uncertainties about its sustainability, is artificial intelligence already present in space operation? And if so, is it experiencing a similar boom?
Yes, certainly. So indeed, as you say, the boom in satellite internet is remarkable, and we will see indeed about the long-term sustainability of it. But turning to AI, as I mentioned, like logic AI systems were kind of already implemented in space operations since a long time, like more like logic if A than B. However, like as I said, these transitions to more advanced AI system that can learn and adapt in facing like what is happening surrounding them. Obviously, came with a slower adoption due to space sector, or we can say matter to avoid, to be really cautious on how we develop our space project given the high cost of failure. So obviously this, we can say black box nature of AI could bring like a predictable resource, obviously has been like a deterrence on AI adoption. But what is important to say at this point, that indeed running AI in space is not an easy endeavor due to the harsh condition of the environment, but also for like the limits that a satellites may present, like power or computational resources on board of satellites. But in the recent years, we are experiencing like a technological advancement and new opportunities are opening up. Indeed, we are having like better hardware and more transparent AI practice that are gradually making sophisticated AI systems viable in space and able to run. And here is like the European Space Agency already put it really well. It recently, a few years ago, stated that AI is becoming vital to handle like the new complexity of the networks that we are launching in space and to coordinate and protect the space infrastructure and to get also the most of all the data that is produced by all these satellites that we are launching out there. So I will say that AI is positioned to have to be an important tool for the space industry, and we probably have like a boom in the next years. And concluding with this question, indeed, I would say that AI development for space is like a kind of natural response to the satellite boom and the different services, because with satellites, with all these satellites, we are collecting so much data, so we need the AI there to analyze and leverage the data that you are acquiring, and therefore ensuring that then we can like long-term benefit from these space technologies that you are putting out there.
Well, yes, of course, you are speaking about the issues of basically collecting and analyzing all the data that are transiting by satellites. And today is the role of satellites in terms of access to space, knowledge of the situation in space, support for operations, and increasingly action in space with the space militarization. Today it's well illustrated, but so concretely, what role will artificial intelligence play? Is it just a tool of collects and analyzing on the analysis of information, or is it more? Could it be a game changer in space operation?
Yes. So I would say that it can be a game changer if like proper integration and like responsible development is brought forward, but definitely we are seeing this growing interest in AI application, and I believe it's poised for a significant boom and to play a really important role in space operations in the future. And indeed, like I always like to put it as such, like imagine like we're in 2040, we have thousands and thousands of satellites over there. So like outer space environment already today is really complex and contested and congested, as we often hear, will be far more complex than is today. So yeah, like spacecraft will need more automation capabilities to conduct more frequent maneuvers, to avoid possible collisions, given like the increasing of number and the increasing in space traffic. And in particular, coupled with, like connected to this, decision making will become even more challenging for human operators, and the limited time and margins of action. So I would say that AI will play a really crucial role to face these challenges. And for sure, as I say, it's not going to be an easy task to run AI out there, but the technological development, there are like some really interesting companies that are developing these systems that is supported by also like the institutional framework to grow and to foster on that. Then if I may talk about some specific AI applications, so to give you like really to grasp of what AI is doing and what will be the role of specific application for AI, we can start with like communication systems. Indeed, yeah, since we are developing all this mega constellation of satellites, in these networks, AI can be really important to manage like all the satellite links and to enhance like, the transfer of data routing and bandwidth that is utilized between like this satellite constellation. And therefore, like this AI can really support this cross-border broadband service, and also like opening up new possibilities for communications for Earth-based networks. But obviously, we have also for data analytics, real-time processing. Indeed, yeah, like make also different for Earth observations, to analyze the data is collected, and to send to operators just what is needed for a specific mission. So I would say that yes, AI will play an important role under like different aspects. Also, like if we talk about space situation awareness and so on.
Space, yeah. I will precisely talk about. I was thinking about the space traffic management and the increasing challenge to make avoidance maneuvers, with Starlink and other constellation projects. During our preparation, the discussion, you evoked the in situ operations. And maybe it's also linked, to all the stuff about lunar prospection, for instance, geological prospections, scientific prospection. So will AI in space bring such benefits also down to Earth?
Yes, this is a really interesting question, really important and timely one, also to grasp what we are like, why there is this much interest on AI in space. It's not just about increasing capabilities in situ, so like in space operations, there are like many, as I briefly mentioned before, but it will also like offer like the integration of AI on board of satellites and these new capabilities will offer possibility for application here on Earth. Indeed, for example, just let's think about disaster monitoring or rapid response. Indeed, like AI-driven satellites can be a game changers also, because they can detect early signs of natural disasters like wildfires or floods or hurricane by analyzing images, and also with thanks to sensor that they have equipped with that. And indeed, like imagine an AI system to spot early smokes and gives the notice to the force that can properly intervene. And therefore, these systems can allow for much quicker response time, which can make really like a difference in minimize damage. And as we sadly have seen recently, such capabilities will be much needed to face these issues. And then obviously AI can be also beneficial to handle, like as I said before, the overwhelming volume of data coming from the growing number of satellites. Indeed, satellites collect so many data, so many images, and then before they were like all downlinked, and then operators were analyzing it. But also just grasp the capabilities of AI here, a lot of those images, perhaps they could have like a cloud on it, so that image was not usable. So you can like train an AI to detect clouds and to discard those images. Like you can like train an AI to send back to Earth just specific images. So like you really speed up the process of intervention for different aspects. And obviously then connected to climate monitoring, AI equipped satellites can track atmospheric condition, like also deforestation rates. So real time can be really invaluable for climate science, environmental conversation. And then obviously for connectivity connected to satellite constellations, it can have a direct impact on indeed optimizing satellite network and increasing connectivity, bridging also like digital divide, so allowing access to internet where historically people have been disconnected. So I would say that these are like some of the Earth-bound benefits of the integration of AI coupled with like this diffusion of satellites equipped with cameras and so on.
So yeah, so to make a quick summary, so basically artificial intelligence is going to be some kind of capability multiplicator with, for instance, as you say, some kind of quick crisis response, with anticipation of fires, hurricanes, and so on. I think we have before moving to the next point. We have a question in the chat. We are moving towards fully automated spaceships that will dispense with the need for astronaut trained to pilot them and react to the slightest malfunction. But so basically, is artificial intelligence will replace astronauts and making possible much quicker avoidance maneuvers, but also maybe hostile maneuvers?
Yes, no, I think also that is a really important question. Indeed, I think that here the point is about, obviously I can offer different capabilities and different level of autonomy, especially like if we have like a forward-looking perspective of how good AI will get at, in particular, that AI in space is still like a new sector that is like growing and growing, especially for the next years. And I think here is a lot about ethical considerations of what AI can be, what cannot be done. So I think at the end is the man, it's us, it's like the policymakers, the lawyers, the technical people, like the people that are doing the projects that will have the last say, and they have to understand to find agreement on what AI can do, what cannot. So I think that will be like a good important point to say. For sure, AI could like have autonomous ships bringing people probably, but do we want that? So I think it's always questions to place out there when we talk about what AI can do, what AI cannot.
Yes, this debate seems looks like really with like you know, the debates a few years ago about how drone will make warfare. Do we let the drone basically making warfare fire targeting itself by itself, or do we keep the man in the cycle, decision cycle? I think on my personal opinion is that even if artificial intelligence is going more and more advanced, when we come to explore some far destination, maybe I think in terms of pure mobility, the man is still you know, superior to artificial intelligence. But of course, I think it's always a trade-off. I think between autonomy and efficiency, basically.
Indeed, yes, definitely. And I also think that here, connected to what you just said, also like AI, probably also like talking about the governance mechanisms surrounding AI. So what AI should do, what should not. We can, obviously, when we talk about AI in Earth and how it can pose like a risk to human beings, to society, we need some kind of legal standards. When perhaps we have an AI in space, really far also from Earth and so on, where probably there is not a risk posed directly to a person or so on, but we can have like more lighter standards. So I think it's always like a matter of what is put at stake when there is an AI involved. But for sure, AI can offer like so many opportunities.
Yeah.
Sorry. If I may, it looks in space activities. Like, why do you want to send someone? You can do it with automation and robots, for instance. And it looks like on the political side that there is no such thing as sending humans to space, because you can communicate actually and do a narrative in it. So it looks like much more difficult to talk about robots, even it's tried actually. So
yes,
it's overlooked.
And I was thinking also there might also be a point in which long-range missions, I'm thinking maybe at sometimes beyond the orbit of the moon or maybe toward Mars and so on, might require increasing artificial intelligence just because of the communication gap between Earth and Mars. Like between Earth and Mars, there are like 8 minutes of delay. So by the time you receive information, by the time you can hike, there's so nearly 20 minutes that have passed. So is it also a technology that will be a natural growth appearing from the needs of decision making in space?
Yes. So sorry if I get your question right, because I think we thought I had some interference. So like if like AI can have like a major role on decision making when we have it like placed in perhaps like more far with the solar system, like if we have AI on Mars or like the moon and so on, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
yes. Yes.
Yeah.
You understand.
Indeed, on that, indeed, I would say if we think about like perhaps like a moon activities or Mars activities, for sure, like if we like want to build some, obviously this is like a really cautious debate that are also going forward, but for sure AI there will have like a major role and perhaps can have like a major involvement for different activities, because at the end I think it's not meant to like do so many activities like on asteroids or so on. So I think AI can really have a major role and would be integrated in many activities in the future. I think also this is like the strategic goal of different institutions around the world today. So definitely.
So if we have no more questions in the chat. The next question, we are slowly moving, forward in our discussion to the question of the threats, because cyber action is often seen as the most accessible by nations. So what is the technical relationship between artificial intelligence and cyber warfare?
Yes, so indeed, when we talk about threats, I would say that AI and cyber warfare have a really intertwined technical relationship. So this is obviously an important starting point. And indeed, as AI technologies offer new capabilities, both in offensive and defensive cyber action, for sure. Indeed, if we talk about, for example, if we talk about offensive cyber warfare, yeah, AI-driven systems can identify and exploit vulnerabilities in networks. So you can put AI working there in background, map the networks, and then attack when you find like defenses in the system. And obviously this can be done really with really high speed and accuracy, so it really poses important risk. And also AI algorithms can automate cyber reconnaissance and can really vast amount of data for weakness and adapt their strategy based on real-time information of the networks. So they can really craft sophisticated attack strategies to exploit the vulnerabilities of the systems. And then if on the other side of the coin, on the defensive side, at the same time, AI can enhance obviously cyber resilience by predicting indeed possible attackers or like enhancing cyber defense mechanisms. And here machine learning in particular can be used to identify unusual network behaviors in the system and quickly to contain them before they escalate. As an example, here we have like some AI-powered anomaly detection systems. There are some computers developing that can flag suspicious patterns in the network and can really activate. So I would say that AI intensify both sides, the attackers and the defensive side. And obviously this dual user nature of AI makes a powerful tool, but also is like some ethical and regulatory questions when we talk about protecting infrastructure that are considered daily more critical, such as the space ones.
This brings me a question. Can an artificial intelligence be hacked? Because today we have lots of automation in space systems, and you always have during the previous some years ago, you have these Ukrainians that hacked a Russian satellite. But we speak at the beginning of our discussion about the machine learning dimension of artificial intelligence. Does it mean that artificial intelligence can be, can they have bias, and can they be hacked, so like another automatic system, or is it completely different?
No, yes, definitely a very good point. Indeed, yeah, we can talk about indeed concrete cyber threats. indeed, as we are relying on AI, like to have onboard controlling of satellite operation, the risk of cyber attacks will go up. Will go up because hackers will try to infiltrate and to take control of this onboard system. So that can be a really risky risk. And so they will try to access sensitive data, or even they could even take control of the satellite function. And with AI on board, obviously there is an expanded attack surface, so more opportunities such bad actors could have for manipulate these systems. And as an example, they could even like just feed fault or wrong data to misinterpret like the analysis of an AI post on satellites. And obviously this can really impact space systems and disrupt like key service like communication and navigation. So I would say definitely like AI was there increase like the attack surface for actors. So it's also really important to bear in mind this risk that also are already present.
I think maybe it's a bit too. I think maybe it's not already the case, but because we are talking about artificial intelligence and they are not they are just at the beginning of their introduction in space operations. But can we imagine that in the future an artificial intelligence thanks to its machine learning capability, can we imagine, for instance, a satellite able to correct its own errors without any human intervention? Can we imagine, for instance, robots or space assets that are able, yes, to make some kind of evolution during their lifespan?
Definitely, and I think that is the point of like sophisticated systems such as machine learning or deep learning, that they can adapt to different situations. And indeed, connected to this, with these opportunities, indeed there are some also threats, like that we can call it as such. There's some like AI specific risk that we will face also in space operations. Indeed, AI, like complex AI systems, can perhaps, if not perhaps developed responsibly with some specific ethical baselines in mind, can behave unpredictably, especially in critical scenarios. So AI systems in orbit, perhaps they can interpret data differently. So you can have like different AI systems that are developed. Probably like developers are not talking to each other. So perhaps those systems can calculate risk or a scenario with different ideas, with different indeed risk appetite, and therefore you can like even have a misunderstanding when like a satellite collision will end up colliding in a third location. So I think here it's really important while we go through with this technological development, it will be crucial for the future of space operation, that we will also have like some kind of standardized protocols that we might, really coordinate such AI uptake in space.
Yes, to you, Brian.
Sorry, just to follow Amaury's question. Do you know if the Perseverance rover was AI or automation? The landing on Mars, where it tried to correct its approach.
Yes, I think like on board of the Perseverance, there's onboard computer, they like update the systems, and so there are like some form of AI.
Okay.
And obviously, as I say, in space exploration, like AI systems are really important. So for sure, like up to today, there was a lot of automation, but AI must increase the utilizations in such scenarios. Obviously, in the exploration of different planets or celestial bodies.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So related to Perseverance, there was the helicopter ingenuity, if I recall. Considering that there was a delay in communication of at least 3 minutes between Earth and Mars, real-time control of the helicopter was not possible. So how did it proceed? Was it what was the extent of the automation it had? Was there any kind of autonomy, or was it just pre-scheduled flights which were transmitted from Earth and then done by the helicopter autonomously, or at least to the pre-planned flight path?
Yes, I think so. I don't have like a specific knowledge on the specific use cases, but for how I can see it is that probably this AI, like this like automation procedures are developed in a manner that if like this rover see a situation has been previously trained to act in some specific way, given this like latency of communication between Earth and the rovers placed in Mars. But for sure, I think that is like an area where like sophisticated AI systems can be really put at stay upright in the years, because it's like probably like an area where like there is less risk of posed to other people, to other systems. So I would say that it would just increase sophisticated AI systems in order to explore like different planets. But I'm not sure going deep on these specific cases.
I think, of course, the Perseverance helicopter is a very specific case. But I think in our discussion, it's highlighting the difficulty to make this difference between very advanced automation and artificial intelligence. And by the way, I think it's the source of a lot of fear, because, you know, we are currently going through a period of great uncertainty about the uses of artificial intelligence, with a great deal of fear and fantasy. It reminds me a lot, you know, maybe the period of nuclear fear, you know, in the late 50s and at the beginning of the 60s. And we speak a lot about the threat, the cyber threat, but is there any other threats outside of the cyber sphere?
Yes, sure. And if we talk about specifically on nuclear threats, this is always important to recall.
Yeah, I make, of course, there is a lot of space threats, such as electronic warfare, cyber, kinetics, and nuclear threats. But considering all the uncertainty around artificial intelligence, outside of the cyber sphere, what other threats the artificial intelligence can make possible?
Yes, I think connected to this point, as every technology, also AI indeed as a dual-use technology, so like for good purposes can be also utilized for malicious activities. And here is an important point of how AI could play, pose like some really important risk to space operations. And in particular, considering like we can say autonomous weapons. And here is a really important point, because if we go through like the legal framework surrounding space, in Article 4 of the Outer Space Treaties, we find a ban on like or for states party to the treaty to place out their satellites or like spacecraft with nuclear weapons, like an arm of mass destruction. But then the line is blurred. They don't talk about like a ban of weapons in general. So there is not a ban of like placing of like general weapons in outer space, and that this is like a really big threat to how AI will be developed and AI will be adopted by different actors. That, as we are well aware of the geopolitical context in where we are in, there's not a lot of bad disclosure of how people are developing their AI for use cases in Earth, but also obviously for space. So I think that is like a really risk that we are facing.
And it's remind me at the beginning of our discussion, you evoked briefly the need of an international standardized framework. And what is, according to you, the role of international law in particular international humanitarian law, in facing this advent of autonomous weapons in outer space?
Yes, so indeed, like obviously international law and specifically international humanitarian law, that is a branch of it, is essential for addressing the use of force also in space, and also to disguise risk posed by autonomous weapons in outer space. And we are aware under Article 3 of the Outer Space Treaties, international law, therefore including the Geneva Convention, this is a very important instrument for international humanitarian law, is extended to space activities. So obviously international law is applicable to space operations. And so this means that military uses of AI, so autonomous weapons also, are bound by this principle. And here I would say there are two aspects. So obviously there are some cornerstones of international humanitarian law that like principles such as distinction or proportionality, that obviously must be also followed like in military activities if like actors are like acting in outer space. So as briefly, like principle of distinction, so like that also like AI in space systems will have to differentiate between military and civil targets. And then proportionality that requires minimizing collateral damage, but we can understand that this will not be easy undertake if such kind of AI systems will be placed out in outer space. And in particular, like this dual use nature of AI amplify these challenges, this unpredictability of AI. And indeed, the AI that is used for civil operations can be used for military usage. And yeah, important to underline that AI can be also used for intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance missions, like to map perhaps enemy troop of the other states on a military battlefield, but can be also used to perhaps target some specific target. Obviously, so the line here is really blurred. And yeah, I think an instrument that is really important, always in the context of international humanitarian law, is the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons, or CCW, that is really important to regulate autonomous systems, autonomous weapons, and in particular because it put an emphasis on meaningful human control. That what is it? And I think it's also connect to the questions and also like about a lot of the debates that we are having here today. That is what is meaningful human control is like human involves having human oversight in AI decision making to ensure adherence to international law, so to international humanitarian law. But obviously, yeah, there are a lot of complexity because there is not even like a full definition of what meaningful human control entails. Because some states perhaps can have like, okay, we need a human in the loop for any kind of operations to ensure it, but then some other states could interpret meaningful human control as like responsible development of an AI would be like enough. So obviously, this is like a lot of questions that are open today and will need to be discussed in the future.
Yeah, it was indeed some kind the next question because we all understand why this new international framework is needed, but how can we deal with the general geopolitical context of a confrontation today in the international relations? I think to some kind of new Cold War between China and the USA. There is this kind of multipolarity in international relations, and I think this is one of the greatest challenge today for all international law in general. And do you think that the question of the issues of artificial intelligence will be treated differently by member states, for instance, of the United Nations?
Yes, indeed, I think this is a timely discussions, and indeed we are, as you say, we are all aware of the geopolitical context that we are in and the complexity for like reaching new agreement at international level given like also obviously given the challenges of heavy consensus to especially in domain like space law, like space governance, geopolitical by nature, where we have like different stakeholders and indeed countries with different views and priorities in particular. And I would say that when it comes to the integration of AI into daily life, or here in particular in space activities, obviously it's a domain that brings a lot of need of answers, because it's a technology that can really bring a lot of benefits, but comes with some. So I think we are seeing like in general, if we talk generally about AI, like a lot of interest on trying to put up there like different regulatory systems or like guidelines by different organizations to understand how to go forward. Then when we come to AI specifically into space activities, we know that the existing legal framework is grounded in agreements such as the Outer Space Treaties, or like some treaties that obviously were adopted where automation like AI was not envisioned, was not still out there. So obviously this instrument provides limited guidance on the use of autonomous space asset in outer space. Obviously they are regulating them properly, I think, at the moment, but they leave some, I would say, open critical legal and ethical question about the use of AI in space. And therefore we will have to kind of have some kind of action, and how we go forward is a really important question. Not easy to find an answer, but what I can, as I see it, and given also like this geopolitical stallum at international level, one potential avenue, it could be like some kind of guidelines by corpus that could address specific AI or data governance aspect in space, such as like along the lines of the long-term sustainability guidance. But obviously this action will not be taken like obviously with take times. We know it take times, but perhaps could be like a really important first step if there are aspects such as ethical use of AI, or like data sharing, so also standardization practice, or like security consideration when we talk about autonomous weapons. And it could be like a first framework that then can be integrated into like also domestic legislations. I think that would be like in we say not ideal world, because in ideal world we will like have agreement at international level, but in a given situation that we have today, that will be like a really important first step.
Yes, as you said, intelligence seems to make progress at the speed, whereas international relations and international law are quite slow in, of course, as you said, as a process of negotiation and so on. And maybe another idea into my mind is that in the last years with the signatures of the Artemis Accords, we have seen a lot of, two interpretation of international space law. We have the interpretation of the Artemis Accords, basically, and with the International Lunar Research Station on the Chinese side. So, according to you, can we see the emergence of two interpretation of what artificial intelligence can be in space? Can we see an instrumentalization of space law as a tool of international influence and power?
Yes, indeed, as you said, we are seeing like we can say like different poles and how like different we can call it silos, how given this geopolitical situation where we are, and like different approach, different view on how space governance should play out in the future. And I think this at the end is what we are having today. But when we talk about AI, I think can be also like really risky, because at the end AI systems that are placed out there, and perhaps they, as I said before, they calculate risk in a different way, they will take action in a different manner, can bring repercussions that will impact everyone at the same manner. Because at the end, the space, as we say, is big, but at the end, the operational ones, in particular the one of today, the spaces are global commons per se. So if like we have some kind of collision and formation of space, everything will be impacted. So I think on AI specifically, it would be really important to have some kind of, at least like some kind of international baseline where this technology should be developed and then further integrated into space operations to be sure indeed to favor like a long-term benefits even by AI integration into space activities. But I would say that will be really important. Then in practice is always like another question.
Okay. The next question is, we have seen on the previous part that we talked a lot about, the benefits of artificial intelligence in space operations and how it can be a benefit for Earth activities. But conversely, can we imagine that artificial intelligence become dependent on certain space capabilities or maybe on certain very terrestrial infrastructures? Because even it's a very advanced automation, in many cases you always need a ground control system. You always need ground server, ground-based server. So can we imagine an artificial intelligence still dependent from the Earth? And still maybe a dependence of space capabilities.
Yes, I think this is like a flip of the coin, and and it's a really interesting questions. And I would say that yes, it can happen that AI also become dependent on specific space capabilities. And if I think about it in particular, I think about connectivity, because for sure, like space. We are experiencing like a digitalization of the space sector and like an increasing interconnection of network instrument, like terrestrial network and space networks, in particular to indeed bring connection to specific areas of the world. So obviously for real-time data transmission and communication in remote areas is really an important point. Also, if we think about scientific mission in Antarctica or like somewhere like remote area of the globe, like connectivity through space will be important, and AI can probably run on that. Then obviously, if we think also about data acquisition, because I said like space is acquiring so many data of Earth, and I think here something really interesting are like digital twins. So like digital twins, and in Italy, in Bologna specifically, there is Cineca, that is like an organization. Why in Bologna? Because there is one of the supercomputers of the EU, so like they have a lot of power. And with a lot, and this is like a partnership with ESA, with a lot of the data acquired, they have like a digital twin, so of the Earth, and with all the data processed, they can also like of the past years, they can predict what could happen on Earth. So obviously, perhaps I also dependent for like some specific benefits, also like on space data. So obviously, this sector will just be more intertwined while we go, so like with increasing digitalization of the space sector.
And maybe a future prospects or a future perspective is to imagine, there is a lot of projects in the new space to actually put into orbit servers and other assets that are very energy hungry. Can we imagine that maybe with such a server in the near future in orbit, artificial intelligence can be less dependent of the Earth, or maybe even totally autonomous and can be, space-based artificial intelligence with only space-based communication relays and so on?
That will be a really exciting future. As I say, indeed, I think about data servers, data centers in space. I think also on that there is like an nimble technological development, and I think it's becoming daily more feasible. From what I see, like a lot of also like AI companies that are trying to develop their like kind of cloud-based systems to offer like AI places already on board there, and for sure that could bring benefits, as you say, down the like climate consideration, because obviously space environment is a really cold environment, so like we will not have any more the need like to refresh or the data center by the computational power of it. But obviously, I think that caused a lot of thought, a lot of work to be able to put it at their system, really work properly, and for the benefit of all in particular. And I think connected to that, something really interesting, and I think here we do a little bit of self-advertisement. I published a paper like on quantum technologies and space, and where I also talk about kind of these data centers capabilities placed in outer space. And it's about the European Union project with I2, because I think aware that they will like kind of try to have on board of such satellites some kind of data capability, data cloud capabilities to process data, also like on board of satellites in outer space. So I would say that those are like strategic thinking that organizations like the EU or like ESA and so on, obviously NASA, they are doing and will play increasingly like an important role in the future.
Yeah, I think it will, of course, it will need a lot more work. I was thinking, for instance, about the issues of the energy source, maybe nuclear, maybe lots of solar panels, and of course the problem of thermal management. Sorry, and it brings us to the question: according to you, what is the future for artificial intelligence in space in maybe 10 years or even 20 years, for instance? Maybe it's difficult to make, you know, a prediction, and this it's quite a wild card.
Yes. Yeah, I will try to give my best in this question. So I would say that for sure in 10 years we will have experienced this boom that we were talking about in space, because the technological development that we're experiencing today, I think we will be like more and more able to put out there those really sophisticated AI systems. So I would say that the future of AI in space is like a transformative potential. It will have like different opportunities for space operation, but also for benefit on Earth, as we talked before. Indeed, I would say particularly given the situation where we are today, with this like surge of interest in like indeed the space industry, I think AI indeed is like another layer of taking the benefit of like of this interest of this data that is produced from Earth observations to optimizing mission planning or to automate indeed space operation in deep space. And but obviously these like positive scenarios, they have to come also within some kind of regulatory consideration within. Indeed, first to allow the company that are developing these systems to really develop the AI and to put out their AI systems. So, you know, in particular to give the funds to develop these AI systems and so on. And obviously we know that in Europe, this has always been like a kind of first point on startups and, you know, machine, because at the end, all these like really technological deep tech, they happen in small and medium enterprise, like startups. We need to be sure that we foster the growth. And obviously then on the other side, that this growth must come with aligned values of responsible innovation, given what I think Europe here is doing a great job on it with like the AI Act. So I would say that we need like to find this balance between technological progress and ethical consideration. So I would say that the long-term impact, if we allow appropriate responsible integration of foreign space systems, can offer like so many different opportunities. And we even don't know where, you know, it can bring us, but
and this brings me the next question. You know, when we are analyzing artificial intelligence, but it's also true for all technologies today, when we are analyzing new capabilities only on the technical point of view, all seems like some kind of wonder weapon, you know, or some kind of game changer. But when we are making reflection on how the events and how the things works. It seems like phenomenon are always the same. It's always the same dynamics. And my question is, according to you, what doctrinal developments do you think should be considered regarding artificial intelligence? I mean, doctrinal developments maybe in the seeking of warfare, or maybe all other field that you can think.
Yes, so I think we already discussed a bit of that indeed. So we'll be with the first point, but then I will on that some other ideas that I have for which kind of doctrinal development indeed we should have in place to ensure this integration of AI in society, but specifically in space, given this seminar. And so indeed, I said, given the geopolitical scenario, international agreement is really complicated to reach there. So as I said, probably some kind of guidelines of couples will be really beneficial on these specific topics. We don't know how much it will take time, given the zero nature of such initiatives. But I would say that, so for the short term, perhaps the space industry, we need to look outside of traditional space law frameworks for guidance. And in particular, here we can have some AI-specific regulation, but also some other tech-related laws and instruments, such as laws perhaps in cybersecurity or data privacy, and that not just talking about the EU, but obviously the EU, we have so many different laws that were created, and there's a lot of debate about regulation and under regulation, but I think they can really guide the way, and so it will be really important to understand how space law, space governance will interact with other domains to bring forward this, I would say, responsible integration. And indeed, as we said, the doctrinal development on AI, I think we are seeing a lot of different initiatives, from the US to get executive order on transport AI. Then obviously we need to see how now the US after election will approach such topics. But then also the United Nations Pact for the Future, where they specifically talked about AI in space, or to OECD AI principle or to UNESCO guidelines. They don't talk all about specifically about AI in space, but they can offer a baseline of frameworks where we can perhaps develop a governance mechanism or new regulatory instruments that can be beneficial. And obviously, as I said, international cooperation is complicated, but it's important when we talk about AI for space. So this interaction between space law and perhaps other domain will be really an important element for the future. I would say a kind of cross pollination of these various legal domains. Not about space law needs amendment or changes because that's complicated, but perhaps we should be more open to interact with different aspects of different laws, different experts. So I think really important. And obviously here we have the European AI Act can really guide through the way on how AI systems are approached.
You have a question?
Yes, just a quick question. Sorry. It's very interesting. Thank you very much. I had two questions, to be honest. I lied. So, it seems to me that the level of protection on strategic assets is very much driven by the level of international consensus on law. And so is AI much more military thing or civilian thing right now? And so I think it will drive for the next 20, 30 years how people and states react in terms of international cooperation, as we see for debris removal, mitigation, for instance. And my second question is, you can't do any international law. You go through standards and you try to create standards to cooperate and compete with partners. And right now, who creates standards in space AI, and where's China?
Good question. So, okay. On the first one, indeed, about international, if I got it right, because about international cooperation in space and how that can play out in the future, right? Or It's more specific. I think I lost a small part, sorry.
I'm so sorry. Is AI in space a military thing or a civilian/commercial thing right now? Who got it first? For instance, in the US. And the second one is about standards.
Yeah, the second about standards. So about the first one, indeed, I think as a very dual-use technology, AI is really like clear example. A clear example. So like any kind of AI development can be used for like military implications. So like calling calls like to really the need of approaching cautiously such domain. And in particular, it's like a really interesting book about original sin that indeed space technologies were born in mind for specific surveillance and military purpose. So like this original sin of how space technologies are developed, and that is always there also for AI. And then, and obviously that about cooperation between the US or Europe and so on. This is a really important question to understand. I hope that it will be like, going forward together. And that would be the best thing that we will see. And then about standards, that is a really important question, it's crucial. So if we talk about standards, I think about standards on AI at the moment connected to the AI Act. There is CHANELEC, it's like a standardization body of the EU, or like the European Union, that indeed is like developing some specific AI standards connected to the risk characterization of the AI Act. So I think that will be really important. Then obviously there are international standards in the US like that are really guiding the way, so such as NIST or like ISO. So I think there are already like some specific AI standards that, if followed, can really like bring a baseline of how systems interact and to render interoperable different systems that we could place out there. But I would say that it's worth mentioning indeed the work that we're doing in Europe with CHANELEC, and I think that those kind of standards would be out around 2026-27. So really curious to see what will come within. But for sure, standards is a really important topic as we underlined different times. I hope to answer it. Then if I missed something, just feel free to pointing out again. So.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Is there any other question?
No.
Okay. So we are slowly arriving to the conclusion phase. We already speak a lot about the needs for standards and the difficulty to make an international framework, the need for cooperation. And in all this game, how can Europe respond to initiatives around the world?
Yes, indeed. So as I briefly said before, indeed, when we discuss about the European Union role in shaping like regulatory initiatives in technology, for new technologies, we encountered the everlasting debate about over-regulation, under-regulation, like the European focus on just creating new laws and not on innovation. But rather like than delve into this issue, I would say that it's worth to mention that the EU, for the moment, has been a global pioneer in this domain, and indeed has been the first to create a concrete framework to govern AI systems with the European AI Act. And indeed, the EU introduced like this, I would say, really comprehensive regulatory approach that will outline specific obligations for developers, operators, users. And so perhaps we make it a leader in this effort to balance innovation with technological innovations. Then obviously how this will play out and about enforcement is a lot of debates, and we will see just going forward. But I would say that it's a good commitment. At least the EU showed a good commitment in maintaining high ethical standards in this domain in deploying emerging technologies. And the AI Act, as you may are aware, it did adopt this like risk-based approach to AI governance. So it classifies AI systems with different categories. So like based on on the risk that they pose to society. So from minimal risk systems that we can say they don't have significant restriction, to high risk systems that must comply with a different range of requirements to be placed in the market, to unacceptable risk systems that are banned altogether. And also this scheme can really guide the way to how we approach AI governance. Then if we talk about the contextualization of space activity, AI in space activities inside the AI Act, they don't talk directly about where like space activity, like AI in space lies. So they don't talk about it. Perhaps in AI risk there are some annex with talking about what the different AI applications that would fall with this characterization. We don't find AI in space. So it leaves open like space to interpretation. I think that is like a really important aspect that will need to be analyzed in the years ahead. But I would say that the role of Europe in technological regulation is, for sure they're working, but the way is long.
Okay. We have room for question. So from the chat, if some people online have a question to ask to our hosts today. Is there any question in the room also? No? Okay. I think it's the end of this seminar session. Thank you very much, Giovanni, for your presence this evening. It was a very instructive, a very dense conversation also. And thank you very much to have been there with us. Just a quick reminder to our audience, we'll be back for the next session of our space seminar on Wednesday 27 this November at 5 p.m. As usual. And the next session will be devoted to cyber warfare in space and with the former students of our university. So good evening to all and bonne soirée à tous and thank you very much again, Giovanni.
Thanks to you for this great opportunity. Yeah, it's very interesting.
See you later.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Bye. Okay.